The day of my second wedding, I took 2 new names. I not only went from Bixby to Barrowvogel, but I went from Barbara to Charlotte. Klaus wanted to name me Elshebet, after another Lady B, a foreign cousin by the name of Bathory. But his brother Felix, who still clung to life, suggested something as a compromise between his British wife and their German heritage. So I signed my marriage certificate, Charlotte of Bixby. And then the work began. The work to convince all the visiting royals attending our wedding that I was, in fact, one of them. I might not have taken Elshebet Bathory's name, but I did take her necklace. Discovered later that to cover any evidence that they were destitute, Philippa had had a crown made for me. It was the same jeweller that made the Romanov tiaras. I remember the great weight of all of those stones, and the great weight of all the eyes at my back. Walking down the aisle of the Berylstad chapel, I realized it had been illuminated by thousands of candles. It was filled with the seats of the highest power in Europe, and the whole time my future husband giggled at me like a naughty altar boy. I'd convinced him to allow his eldest brother to attend our wedding. Felix was now confined to a wheelchair, but he and Ludmilla had been the only ones to coach me. And I appeared every bit a princess. I had them all convinced, from Windsor to Romanov, until our first kiss, which was enthusiastic. I had to greet them all after the ceremony, and pretend I didn't recognize half the men from my time in my house of ill repute. Many of them were unkind, except a young Alex of Hesse. She remarked that I was elegant, and that one day she wished to have a crown like mine at her wedding. I wanted to scream at her about how much it weighed, that my now husband had gifted me a murderess's necklace, and that I wore a dress that weighed almost as much as I did. I wanted to tell her that a Maynard was now in the great halls of German royals. I wanted to tell her I missed my parents, that it had been 40 years since I'd last seen them, that I wished my mother could have seen what I'd become. Not a monster, but a lady. Later that night, Klaus and I had our own wedding feast. He'd had a servant boy prepared with pear and cheese for me. He sat and watched me eat. He made more private vows to me then, that he would never tame me, that I would never be hungry again, that we would do great things together. I wondered now if he saw the irony in his words, that I should remain wild. But he had also put a chain around my neck.